I'm going to talk about three key things today. First of all, I'm going to give you an overview of a change project that we did here at the university that was huge. It was university-wide. It brought in e-learning, e-submission virtually across the institution, and e-marking. And I'll talk about all the different factors and how we had strong executive leadership that led that change when we did it. The second thing I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to ask the question, was whether we can actually drive learning technologies without that senior leadership support. And then the third thing I'm going to talk about is, if we haven't got it, what can we do about it? Okay, so let me move on. We've already said that I'm at Salford, Digital Skills Manager. The institution has about 20,000 students, 2,000 staff and 250 programs. A lot of our students are first in family, they live locally. We have a smaller number of students that are 18 that come and live on campus. So just to give you an idea of our makeup. And we've got some challenges when it is first in family and that more mature students that have got a lot of baggage and so on. Okay, right. So the Project Elevate that we did, really I'm going to talk about the four components to this project that drove institutional transformation. I'm going to talk about it in terms of strategic points and issues, in terms of the training and the support that we needed to implement that project, and then the checks that we did to make sure we've got where we needed to be. So as this is about strategy, I'm going to do that first, but I think the others are important to mention because without those being in place, the training and the support and the checks, we couldn't have had a successful project. So in terms of the strategic direction, we had a Pro-Vice Chancellor who was very proactive and who was very supportive of technology and sound teaching and learning. So we were quite lucky with this project. He started off taking it from the direction of the student experience. Bearing in mind the student experience is the #1 driving factor that makes people want to adopt these changes. If you look at the data from the UCISA Technology Enhanced or TEL survey and the Digital Capabilities survey, all the data from the institutions comes back and says that student experience is the #1 factor. Also, that's reinforced in the Blackboard 6 characteristics as well. So, and we had that, and we actually had as part of the project board, the chair of the Students' Union on the project board who was telling us that really students didn't like it when they went into one Blackboard module and then they went into another one and they were completely different setups. They couldn't find anything. Some included some data, some didn't have other data. So students would go in and invariably feel like that, lose the will to live over it. So having that student voice and backing made it very difficult for anybody to argue with what we were trying to do with the project. Just to contextualise it, I mentioned there that this was part of a transformation project across the institution. At the time, there were several projects going on across the university. We were doing what's called an academic portfolio review, which looked at how many students were on a programme, whether it was a new subject area, and whether we should rationalise some of those projects. There was another project looking at greater efficiencies that we could make. So, for example, not having admin staff upload content to Blackboard, but having academics do them themselves, and so on and so forth. I won't list them all, but just contextualise it. It was part of a wider project. So the Elevate project had a project board. Now, I think that was essential as well in driving this particular project forward. It was chaired by our proactive Pro-Vice Chancellor academic, As far as I remember, he was at every single meeting, chairing that meeting, asking the pertinent questions, driving it forward. Very enthusiastic. He totally understood where he wanted to go on the journey and what we needed to do to get there. There were key stakeholders on that project board, so everybody got a voice that was relevant. I've already mentioned the student union were on the project board, academics, IT technical people, IT project manager, the support desk, training, human resources, academic development unit, the library, schools operation managers were on that project board. It applied Prince 2 methodology. And the aim of this particular project was to upgrade Blackboard from version 8 to version 9.1. Also had some other aims as well. In that, it was bringing in this e-learning, e-marking and e-submission. Now you can see on the side of the screen here a screenshot of the Blackboard standards. I'll just zoom in that more closely and just show you what we mean by that. So we decided that all Blackboard modules should have some baseline criteria. And for example, there was staff information, learning materials, assessment, this list goes on, reading lists. And each one of these had either an essential item or a desirable item. So if I look at this staff information here, what was essential was contact details, and those basic contact details included things like email, telephone, where their office is located, who the staff were involved with the delivery, not just the module leader. If people wanted to go over and above, then they could put in their Twitter name, their LinkedIn name, Skype, photograph, their Seek profile, and a brief synopsis of themselves. But you can see we gave them the basic information, and then we gave them things to aspire to as well. Everybody had to meet these standards, and I'll come back to how we checked that in a little while. Are any of these essential items automatically ingested from other IT systems? Yes, the reading list was, Ashley. That was the only one that was automatically brought in. So, teaching and learning strategy also referenced these e-learning and e-submission elements, and we're trying to bring out the strong pedagogical use of technologies in the strategy. The assessment policy changes were also brought in at the same time. So it saw wide-scale use of e-submission apart from exemptions. And that was the obvious things like a piece of artwork, a physical artifact, a performance. People could seek an exemption for their head of school for such scenarios. But your average text-based submission was generally through Turnitin, and non-text-based submissions, such as presentations and audio, were submitted through Blackboard Assignment or Grade Centre. And we used Blackboard other tools as well, such as tests and wikis and blogs. So we had 4 different ways that people could submit their assignments. Everything had to be e-marked. Now that was in terms of they had to put the grades into Blackboard. Whether they put in qualitative data was up to them. We encouraged them to, but that wasn't mandatory at this stage. But the marks definitely had to be in Blackboard. They could also use, of course, audio, text feedback in a Word document, or even video feedback, but that wasn't essential. And this was another change factor, that they had to feedback within 15 working days or 3 weeks. So this was all mandated as part of the project. I'll come on to in a moment how well that worked. Just something else that I wanted to point out was that We had some rewards as part of the project, but nothing really explicit. We identified some TEL champions within the schools who got some teaching off timetable, but there were also other things that we positively encouraged, which were people to do submissions for conferences or awards, or to do case studies as well. And that gave people a sense of pride in what they were doing. There were all sorts of professional bodies, whether it's, the HEA, Changing Learning Landscapes, that people went and spoke at, or GISC, USISA events, library events and so on. We continue to encourage people to speak at those type of events about what they're doing in their practice. We do have some internal teaching awards. This is a photograph from one of them, where what we found is that people who are embedding technologies into their teaching are winning the awards. Usually they're reflecting on their practice, thinking about more efficient ways of working, ways that students can be more engaged and involved. And of course there's the major awards like Times Higher and a whole load of other ones as well that I could cite. And we've also done some case studies as well, which we've got some little videos on our website that show people using the technologies. And then we also do external ones as well, whether it's Blackboard. There's some of us speaking on the Blackboard pages, like GISC, the Change Agents Network, student digital capabilities work, and USISA case studies as well. So those are other rewards that we encourage people to participate in. So that sort of covers off all the strategic things. Just to quickly move on to the training part of it here, because, I'm just going to go back a slide. As I said before, I don't think to implement anything strategic that's an institutional change, it can't be delivered without having the fundamental support and the training in place. Checks, arguable, but I'll come back to that when we get there. So with the training, we looked to deliver it the best that we could do. To be honest, we were a central service that you will be familiar with the criticisms that people working in central service get from academics about you're not professional teachers, who are you to tell us how to teach and so on. So we wanted to make it the best possible solution pedagogically. So we went for a blended solution. It was mandatory, but we didn't tell them that at first, but we had to do in the end to get people to attend the training. And the reactions were really nice afterwards. We usually found that people were saying things like, oh, well, that was a lot better than I expected. Oh, I actually enjoyed that. I got something out of it. So we packed it full of ideas. So even that the most technology digitally capable were going away with an idea that they hadn't thought of before. Now, I'm not going to go through all these, but they are in the notes section of the slide if you want to pick up any ideas around, we put QR codes and link them to online module evaluation forms. We used open educational resources. So just to give you a quick overview of the training, it included pre-workshop activity, which was a video to contextualize the training. We had an activity where we put the staff member into the student's shoes to get the point across. So they had to go into the Blackboard, two different Blackboard modules. One was the worst possible example we could think of, and one was the best possible example that we could think of. And they had to find some information. And they found that quite, well, some of them said that the feedback was that they found that quite useful and they understood where students were coming from. We also got them to partake in a study. We knew there was best practice and technology use going on across the institution in pockets, but what we didn't have was a picture of how widespread that was. So we pinched some of the questions from the TEL survey, added some of our own, and put them into that survey so we could benchmark the institution of where it was at that time. Once we'd finished all that, they were encouraged to reflect on their own practice and their own modules before they came to the workshop, particularly thinking about what they'd experienced when they've gone into the good and the bad modules, and any ideas that they wanted to pinch and then put into their own modules when they came to the workshop. Now the workshop was exactly that. It was a hands-on where they were working on their own modules, so they were doing the job at the time when they were training. It wasn't some module they were never going to use, just a training module. It was actually their own Blackboard modules, so they felt that they were maximising the use of their valuable time. It was interactive, it was discursive, it was hands-on, it was innovative, and I've touched on some of the innovations that we had in there. And as I said, there's more detail in the bottom of the slides, and yes, you can have the PowerPoints today, certainly. I'll upload them to my SlideShare, and I think Penny's going to upload them and send out the link as well. Between us, we'll get that out. And after that, then they did some online training as well, so that they got experience of online training as a student. So they saw what that was like for themselves. So that's covered off training quickly. The support that we put into place briefly was, as I mentioned before, that we had TEL champions in the school. There was a minimum of 1 in the school, so they worked very closely with us in the centre. But they were out there supporting their colleagues down the corridors, and they were reporting to us and their head of school about how things were going. So there was a constant dialogue from the grassroots coming back to us and us going out to them. And they did get, well, some of them got time off teaching, not all. We ran a dedicated help desk. This isn't the central IT desk, we work closely with them, but this was a dedicated help desk for the project. And we ran drop-in surgeries, additional ones during the whole training rollout, where people could just drop in, do the work that was needed. And we also introduced a hashtag for the project as well. Was that somebody wanted to say something?
We've got a question coming from Paul. He's asked, are there any thoughts on using open badges to provide a framework for academic upskills and training?
I've thought about it, but we haven't implemented it. Not for any reason other than time resource, Paul. I know Staffordshire are doing something with open badges. But we here haven't been able to prioritise I'd like to do more investigation around that, and certainly accreditation for staff development. But that's where we're at. If we get time at the end, we can perhaps ask other people what they're doing as well, or perhaps you can type away in the chat box. Dedicated staff to the help desk. We had 5 staff at the time, but they were also training as well as running the help desk. Did people attend the drop-in surgeries? They did during the project, and for quite a while afterwards. They did attend the drop-in surgeries, and they liked that one-to-one support. They have dropped off subsequently, and we've reduced it back down to 1 surgery a week. But what we found is that people just come to the room where the help desk is being run and sit and have a one-to-one in between phone calls, or with somebody else who isn't answering the phone calls. So the office has effectively become the room that another drop-in surgery room. Okay, fire away and everybody comments on that, and I will move on to the checks part of it. What do we do around checking that these things were happening? I've mentioned the benchmarking survey already. Now, we haven't had a chance yet to go back and do another iteration of that to find out where people are at. The data has been useful, even though we've not done a further study. We certainly fed back to the last use as a TEL survey with that data, and there's been a couple of other things that I've used that data for as well. But I'd be most interested to see how many people are using Twitter next time, or Blackboard Test, to see if we've got some traction on that. My feeling with Twitter is, and QR codes, is that because they saw it in the training, that a lot of people have gone away and said, oh, I really like that idea. Can I come and talk to you about that afterwards? And they did do that. I just don't know how many. What we did with the QR code was, when it came to the evaluation at the end of the training session, we put the QR code up on the whiteboard, encouraged people to scan it with their phones. It linked to the evaluation form, which I think, yeah, was in Bristol Online Survey Tool at the time. They filled it in. And then they could see, oh, I could get all my students to fill in their module evaluation questionnaire this way, or whatever. So it gave people examples that they could take away. Same with the Twitter hashtag. We used it during the training to take questions, and people went away and thought, oh, I can use this in my teaching. In terms of reporting, what we reported back on, well, I reported back on, that was not planned, but it was something that I wanted to do strategically, was on the training and how many people were attending. Now, it was quite a pragmatic reason that I wanted to do that, because I have 2 training rooms with 15 desks and PCs in each training room. I had got trainers allotted for a 7-week period, and there was a training session morning, afternoon, every day for seven weeks. I had 900 staff to train, and I knew that to get them all in those 7 weeks, I had to have virtually full attendance from day one. Now, day one in the morning, we had 3 people attend. In the afternoon, I think it was 2. It was because the way we handled the bookings of the training, they were told to attend. They were communicated to by email by the school managers. They didn't really engage with it. They didn't realise they had to attend, or the email that had gone out, I hadn't had any input into the content of that email, so it wasn't selling it to them. They didn't realise the benefits of coming to the training, and that's the approach that I would have taken. So what I immediately started to do was report on a weekly basis how many people had attended the training. In fact, I have an example there. This table at the bottom here, you can see in the College of Arts and Social Sciences how many had attended, how many had booked to attend, how many didn't attend, or have no booking. So we got an overall picture of how bookings were going in each different school. You can see on this chart, this was week 1. If we're looking at 100% attendance up there, you can see we are way down on day 1. And then as we started reporting, we started getting more people engaged, and then we suffered all sorts of peaks and troughs throughout. But you can see the red line shows that we did get there. We did have to run some extra sessions afterwards. What we did once a fortnight was more detailed, perhaps name and shame might be the word, but we sent a report off to the heads of the school, which was like a register. I've removed all the names out of confidentiality, but it said, so this would say person A had attended, cancelled, there's 2 cancelled because there were 2 different ways they could cancel. DNTU did not turn up, so they booked it and then they didn't turn up, which was particularly frustrating from my point of view. But it told them exactly what people, individuals, had done within their own area. The university, this went up, that report went to the executive, the first one, not the detailed one. The second one, that named them, went to the heads of schools. The executive knew that this had gone to heads of schools, and the executive met every Monday morning and was saying to people, get your people on the training. It was on the agenda of every exec meeting on a Monday to get the figures, to see where the projections were going to be. We knew we had to get people through the training for this project to take place, and having that senior leadership support and having the executive, how should we say, encourage heads of school to make sure that their staff attended worked. There was a lot of pushing from the top to the heads of school, then down to the directorates and so on. And it meant that we got people through in about 10 weeks. So that was effective. And the other check that we put into place was where we did a student audit after the event to check whether the Blackboard standards had met those minimum standards. You can see the green line is the standard, the blue columns are the school results. You can see 3 schools didn't quite meet the standard, but the rest of them did. So we paid students to go in, check the modules, see if they had all those criteria that we've mentioned, and then feedback to us. So that's Project Elevate. I am conscious we've hit 11:30 already. I am going to skip that question about whether it's necessary to have senior leadership drive or whether it will happen without. With that whole Elevate project, we were very lucky because we did have senior leadership support. Not everybody will have that. So what I've done is I'm going to skip down some slides here to talk about, if you haven't got senior leadership support, what can you do to get it, to encourage them to get that message. And this table here, I'll just pick a couple of examples out, looks at who the people are and what their agendas are. So for heads of schools, PVCAs, it's going to be the student experience, it's going to be the NSS scores, it's going to be improving teaching and assessment. Anything that we can do, messages that we can say how the technology will meet their agendas, will help them get the message. And I've covered in this table a whole range of people, because I think the obvious one, the number one driver is the student experience, but there are other people that you could target, such as finance directors who will be interested in cost savings. So you could look at utilisation of virtual classrooms there, using Collaborate to reduce travel costs, for example. And they'll like this, you'll get their ear. We changed our travel policy just to include a line about Collaborate and have you thought about meeting virtually. So there's a whole list of different people that I've listed there and the things that you might get their attention with. The other thing that I've just focused on, I will focus on here, is like IT directors. They're very interested in getting efficiencies out of their investments. And I think it's useful to use the learning technologies to piggyback on other rollouts. So for example, at the moment, we've just done an upgrade to our finance system, which is Aggresso, and we have used Collaborate to deliver some of the training, which has gone out to all the budget holders. Now there's 525, I think, budget holders in this institution. So they've all had to use Collaborate to receive their training, many of whom have never been exposed to it before. And what we've done at the end of it is say, if you're in this role, you might think about using Collaborate this way to do personal tutorials, to talk to students, to deliver classes, to do internationalisation and so on. So we've been quite imaginative, I think, in some of the things that we've done to find ways to influence leaders within the institution. Other things that I've done, and I was going to ask you to write onto a slide any ideas that you've got, but perhaps you can put those in the chat box and I'll pick those up in a second. But I'll just quickly whip through the ideas that I've listed here, is how, ways that we can help our leaderships to get I've put get it, but what I mean by that is get the fact that technology can really help them make a difference with their agendas. I've put a picture of Martha Lane Fox there because if you saw the recent Richard Dimbleby lecture, which will probably still be available on iPlayer, she says a very similar message, that businesses, whatever they are, education or otherwise, can really monopolise, and we're a long way off monopolising what affordances technology have for us. So I circulated a few headlines from that presentation with the link to it to key players in this university, saying, you want to watch this, you'll be really interested in this. The second point I've made is that surveys are useful to complete because it promotes discussion. An example I can cite is the UCISA TEL survey. When I was filling that in, I had to consult with the head of marketing and the director of estate. There's a question here, can you help us answer that? And by doing that, it stimulated a discussion with them and helped get them on board to embedding TEL into the university. So it's like any excuse to talk to them, really. And then afterwards, showing them the results from the survey, saying, you remember we had that conversation a while ago? These are the results that came back. Where do you think we sit with that? Do you think there's anything else we can do to build on what we discussed? I've sent events out to people. A good example was the Change Agent Networks that JISC run, I sent that to our Dean of Students because there was somebody talking about where they'd used iChamps, which are student digital champions, to promote the use of technology. And I was delighted to see him at the webinar, and he's taken those ideas now and he's starting to work on those so we can implement them here at Salford. I've just added a slide on international groups. In the notes there are a whole list of examples of events, but for international people there's all these examples, and nationals as well. EDUCAUSE, which is the American educational IT people, have a lot of good ideas and information that we can use. UNIS, which is the European IT Directors Forum, likewise have lots of ideas. I went to their conference last year and they provided some excellent examples that I've passed on to other people within our institution. I won't go through the list of all these examples. I've already mentioned piggybacking on other rollouts, leadership and management training. Our HR soft skills trainers were rolling out some leader and management training. I went to the deliverer and said, can I have a look at your lesson plans and see where I can build some examples of technology into the training? And one that springs to mind was the communication module, where he built in ideas that Collaborate could be used. Prior to that it was very soft skills, no IT in there at all. Built-in email as well and Twitter, but Collaborate was a good opportunity to get that in. And I've already talked about the Aggresso training. The leading by example, if you can get your strategic leaders or any leaders that can start using these technologies in their own areas. So for example, we had our Pro Vice Chancellor and our Vice Chancellor both use Collaborate to deliver briefings to the university. So they're leading by example there. HR using Blackboard for their soft skills training and other training is another example. And I think, just to quickly summarise, the whole slides are packed with all these ideas that I've mentioned. Just picking out some of the key points, I think it makes a massive difference if you can get exec support. If you can't, you're going to be looking at pockets, getting a project board with the key stakeholders, particularly the students, are important. Using project plans and project methodology made a big difference for us. Aligning to university goals, getting it embedded into strategies, setting the standards like the minimum standards, obviously having the training and support, using checks and measures where you can do, taking remedial action where it allows you to take remedial action, where things aren't working. I talked about influencing those key players by any way possible, and using like other opportunities just to get the message out there to help people get IT. Right, I'm sorry I've run over slightly. Thank you very much. I'll look at the questions now. Or Penny, can you feed any to me, because I have not been able to read all this and talk at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so Adam from New College Stamford is trying to push e-submissions, but changing the culture from paper to online has been a challenge, and wants to know about ways that you promoted e-submissions.
Okay, luckily we've done a pilot with some early adopters, well, some early adopters and some reluctant people as well in the health school, and we were able to use that case study from within our own institution to show other people across the institution. Look, you know, you may think that you don't want to do it. RSI, health issues was a common one, but we were able to promote the benefits in terms of time saving, being easy to read for students, data back from students that they liked it more. Those are the things that I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, great. There's also a second question here from Pedro, who mentions, if your e-marketing policy requires only a mark, what proportion of staff have also moved to e-feedback? If not much, will there not be a detached feedback approach with one mark in one place and feedback in another? Are there plans to bring in e-feedback as strongly desired, and what are the implications that it will have?
Right, okay. In terms of what proportion of staff have moved to e-feedback, I can't give you a figure because we haven't done that piece of work to go out and measure it. We know there are pockets of people doing text feedback, your basic adding a Word document or a PDF, or using Turnitin. There is people using audio feedback, and we've got people using video feedback, but I can't give you any figures on that. I just know we've got pockets. This is why I'm looking forward to the next survey, benchmarking survey that we do, that will be next year when we upgrade again, to then see how many people are doing it. Is that all the questions?
Thanks, Gillian. There's one more here from Ashley. Was Elevator a funded project or something you decided to do at Salford?
It was not a funded project at Salford. It was something we decided to do at Salford, and we actually figured it would make cost savings, which I can't remember the figure now, I'm afraid, but we did realise it would make some cost savings in terms of not having admin staff upload to Blackboard. I think with e-submission, I think we did a calculation around the time it would take for marking and the speeds there. So we did do a calculation. I can try and find it, and then feed that back. There was something else I was going to say, but I've forgotten it. Sorry.
Okay. There was one more question here, an interesting one. You said you stress benefits to staff in order to drive staff to the training sessions. So what benefits did you stress?
Okay. I just remembered what I was going to say with that last point, which was about the cost savings around the project. A lot of them were not cost factors as well. One of the benefits of e-submission was that we had a lot less lost work, and because it's all tracked, students get receipts, it's reduced that problem. So the benefits for staff that we would sell was that this is what the students wanted. That was the first thing, because that's the hardest thing for them to argue with, and that's what students were asking for. That, I'm remembering now, sorry, I'm a bit vague over time. There were little things like they could do the work within the workshop. You know, you could do this in your office, but you might as well come and do it in a supported area. You might get some other ideas. We'll look at more efficient ways of you working and try and save you time. Oh, thanks, Ashley. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, great. Any more questions? Here's one. Where do staff load video feedback to?
Now we have Helix. Originally it was just onto Blackboard, but now we have Helix and we're using that as a streaming server now.
Okay, great. I'm conscious of time, so I think we will move on. Gillian's provided her contact details just on that previous slide, so feel free to reach out to Gillian there and follow her on Twitter and LinkedIn.
Yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to contact me. You know, if there's anything else you want me to pick up on or send, I'm very happy to.
Okay, and just from myself, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Gillian, for presenting today's webinar. It's been really insightful, and I also wanted to thank everybody else for joining the session today and taking the time out to do that. Just a couple more housekeeping points. Everybody who's attended the webinar will automatically receive an email over the next few hours with a link to the recording and a survey. We'd like you to fill in the survey if possible. It's very brief, just to share your thoughts, and we'll use the input to help us better plan future events. So if I just pop that in the chat box there, you can take a look at that following the webinar. As you can see from this slide, we've got 2 more webinars coming up from Regent's University London and also Sheffield Hallam University. They're part of this Technology Adoption Series, and they discuss other best practices around technology adoption. and we hope that you can join us for one of those sessions. If you do have any more questions, please do drop us an email at askus@blackboard.com. I'll just post that into the chat box as well for you. Feel free to get in touch with us. And once again, I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Gillian, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.